And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism in Louisiana, elevating the cause of constitutional conservative citizens across the state, and rapidly now draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You're the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for, and we are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd really appreciate it if you'd also help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the full episodes from our YouTube and Rumble channels, and links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Thanks for joining us for the second part of our election integrity conversation with Matt Meck.
Matt, I want to ask you about J6 and the show impeachment trial that Trump was subjected to most recently. I think that may be in the third effort to impeach him for allegedly trying to incite an insurrection on January 6th at the Capitol. It appears that the powers that be, the people who orchestrated that show trial in the Congress, have admitted that it was all for show, that they knew what the truth was, yet they were trying to create a certain narrative. Is that your understanding of what's going on here, that was just a colossal and corrupt waste of our taxpayer dollars?
I think so, yes. And their own words, right? They interviewed on NPR. They indicated it was done for show. It was done to influence politics. And with all due respect to the folks of Louisiana, I'd ask Mike Johnson, your native son there, why don't you repudiate the J6 committee that was created not according to due process? And he's a lawyer, I get it. I don't know him as well. I have some friends who know him and says, hey, he's a good guy. We know him when he was younger. But look at all the evil stemming from that, I would say, unconstitutional, not duly constructed committee that did not have the minority be able to appoint its own members. Nancy Pelosi appointed the members, could not have minority counsel, and could not do cross-examination. What committee? And even in Watergate, for God's sakes, we had that.
It was yes, completely and totally unfair and violative of due process.
It's a Soviet show trial, if you're going to go back to it, I think, or a Venezuelan show trial. And I wish to God in my heart the Republican leadership would say, guess what? That committee, we're the current Congress, that was null and void. Oh, by the way, and they didn't give us all the data. They tried to erase stuff. Stuff's missing. The videos are missing. Look at all the terrible crap that's rolled downhill from that. And I would just wish the Speaker and again, another wonderful Louisiana native, Scalise there, just say, no, that committee was null and void. Anything flowing from that committee is fruit from a poisonous tree.
Absolutely. I was looking up the definition of a show trial, Matt, and the definition that I found was it is generally a trial of political opponents in which the verdict is rigged and designed not to ensure justice, but to influence public opinion and to coerce a public confession. Doesn't that describe exactly what that committee was trying to do to President Trump?
Yes, and I just was holding up to the camera, but it's fifth generation warfare. It's the battle for the mind, the battle for the narrative. You have some people who are sheeple, if you will, and some are never going to change. They just are. But it's designed to do exactly that. Instead of rigorous debate, rigorous debate and would have been, right, to have the minority appoint its members, have a minority council, and have cross-examination. That's the bedrock of how we function, or how we functioned as a society, right? And especially in a political or pseudo-legal perspective inside a political committee. And we didn't do that. Why? Because it's trying to frame a narrative.
That's right.
And what I think we're seeing happen is people are beginning to see inch by inch COVID, vaccines, election was secure. Oh, no, oh, Sean, this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. Haldeman just did this. That narrative is crumbling. So now, again, my estimation, it's the time of extreme turbulence, because like a wounded animal that's cornered, they're going to lash out. Their means of control of power is on the precipice of going by the wayside. They are going to do anything. Matter of fact, look at the Washington Post article. Was it last week or this past weekend, where they said, hey, they think the only way that they can beat Trump is through lawfare. Biden's numbers are crumbling. Trump's, and as folks have said, again, no fans of MAGA or Trump, that Trump is not, he's not just a political leader, he's a leader of a movement. And it's beginning to cross demographics. Folks who maybe didn't like his style or his temperament said, but hey, by the way, but the policies were
yes.
good. Right? The policies.
Yeah.
And Trump now, from what I can see, is surging among Black Americans and surging among Hispanics, and I think that frightens them to the core.
And Jewish Americans, right? There's a October 6th American Jewish population and an October 7th Jewish American population who are realizing, oh, wait a second, the Democrats and Biden, and I say Democrats as the party in D.C., not the Democrat in your local maybe county commission or school board, who maybe you've been to high school with and and maybe they're Democrats or you're Republicans because your mom and dad were of that party. But these people, you're arming Iran to the tilt or to the hilt with $6 billion and more, because you allow them to trade oil, but yet you're kind of picking on Israel or telling Israel you can't do this, you can't do that, but while you're arming somebody who wants to see them get destroyed. So I think more and more people, maybe this is God's plan, right? You have to, parents. I remember as a kid, my dad would tell me, I'm trying to not have you learn the lessons I learned.
Right.
And sometimes you got to learn that lesson yourself, or you got to see it yourself in Technicolor. And I think the country is seeing the corruption that has been embedded in our system, the evilness. And again, my opinion, this is not just politics. This is spiritual warfare.
That's right.
Just manifested on this earthly realm in this way. But folks are beginning to see it, whether they're poor, whether they're Black, whether they're Jewish, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're white, whether they're Muslim, Christian, Buddhist. They're seeing for their eyes that, wow, this has been pretty bad. And I tell people, and again, we had Mark Morgan on our call last Friday. He was Trump's CBP. He was ICE director for a while. He said, words mean things. And I would implore your audience, remember, we're not a democracy. We're a republic.
That's right.
Right. And that, again, from the Macy conferences, 1940s, 1950s, that was intentionally injected, right, to have us think democracy. So mob rules, because in a democracy, mob rules. Look at our founding fathers. They painstakingly they did not want a democracy. They knew what democracies eventually end up in.
Well, that's right, Matt. They understood John Stuart Mill's concept of the tyranny of the majority. A majority can tyrannize a minority, so pure democracy can bring injustice to a society just as much as a dictatorial, malevolent monarch can, which is why when we say that we are a constitutional republic, that means that we zealously guard the fundamental natural rights even of the minority. And that's why it is so very important. But I wanted to go back for just a second to J6, because I really believe that many Americans finally woke up and are, because of the incredible mockery of justice that was exemplified in the J6 congressional trial against Trump. And while I was thinking about that, I was contrasting it with the Nuremberg trials that occurred after World War II, in which the most notorious Nazi war criminals were tried at Nuremberg. And if you recall, the Soviets wanted to line the Nazis up and just summarily execute them. And there were other Allied countries that simply wanted to kill them, take them out and kill them. And Justice Robert Jackson, the Supreme Court justice who actually went over and led the prosecution of that case, said, absolutely, we cannot do that. The world's eyes are upon us, and we must zealously guard the principles of rigorous due process and the presumption of innocence, because if we're able to do that, not only are we setting a precedent that says we will always honor the rule of law in every circumstance, even if we happen to know that they're guilty, but he said if we do that, this will be the greatest tribute that vengeance ever paid to justice, and it will keep the poison chalice from reaching to our lips. Because if you can dispense with the rule of law in a case like this, ultimately the rule of law can be dispensed with even as against us. So the Nuremberg trials are a great example of the importance of due process in every situation. Certainly not comparing Donald Trump to any of the Nazi war criminals, but can you imagine if the J6 trial in Congress, if they had embraced that principle and that doctrine with Trump instead of just the opposite?
I agree, Chris. That, and I go back. Remember when John Adams defended the British soldiers who had shot at the colonists up in
Boston Massacre.
Boston. Yeah, he still he said it's important to follow due process, and I think if I remember right, he was able to get them acquitted. Right, that they were fired upon or skated upon, and I wish we could remember those principles that we fought for. Nuremberg being the most recent one at a large scale, and also whatever happened to the words of Patrick Henry, sir. I might disagree with what you say, but I will defend to death your right to say it. I might not like a Hakeem Jeffries is saying, or or Mitch McConnell is saying, but I will fight. And I did. I was in the Marine Corps for 21 years. I'll fight to the death for their right to say it, because in our democratically elected constitutional republic, if we don't have what you just talked about, Chris, that mechanism where we have confidence in the system, and the system allows for the non-kinetic resolution of differences, it's not a good scenario if we don't have.
It's not a good scenario, and again, the poison chalice will ultimately reach to our own lips, which is why we have to guard the rights even of those with whom we disagree.
I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information.
Speaking of due process, Matt, I have to ask you about the J6 prisoners, the ones who are still sitting in a D.C. gulag without having had the opportunity for any kind of due process at a trial. What are your thoughts on that? It just seems to us so profoundly unjust.
It is, and if you look at just something General Flynn had, I think, put on his Twitter account or X account, whatever it's called now, is you look at that. This is tangentially related to the pipe bomb stuff, right? And you find that a very reputable company that does geofencing, these cell signals that they were finding, these people, who were involved in this planning of the pipe bombs, looks like they were also found from a geo location perspective in parking lots that only can have a key access to DOJ parking lots, right? So you gotta ask again, what's the bigger picture, right? And I'd say, as Laura Logan has said to me a couple of times, how she, I think, does her journalistic stuff, and she's I put her against anyone on her credentials. Ask why 5 times, like why, and get to that root cause. And to your point, who thinks this is right? These people who walk in, sometimes waved in by the police. They walk out, as Mike Davis said before, I think yesterday on Bannon's show. This wasn't an insurrection. This was a lawfully allowed by the Capitol Police protest that got violent. It became a riot, but not an insurrection. It got a riot. But look at all the indications of warning that it was an instigated riot. It was, again, 5GW trying to a color revolution type of thing done to affect that. And look at the illegal alien. And as Mark Morgan said, don't call it immigration reform. It's border security. The words mean things. What's happening on our border is a border security issue.
That's right.
Not immigration reform. And he said, I look at that one illegal immigrant who was beating the crap out of the cops. And then the DA up there lets him out with no bail. But yet you got somebody who didn't do a damn thing as far as hitting anybody or breaking a window, even those things, right? And they're in prison for years waiting a trial. They have no criminal background. I bet you they don't even have traffic violations. It just, to me, is unfathomable. And I've talked to folks previously that some of us who were in the military, and we signed up and we took our oath the first time we became second lieutenants or privates or whatever. We're like, I never thought this would be the state of America in the 21st century. But you're right, Chris. To me, it's an anathema. Is that the more you look at it, it was a designed narrative. More and more indications of warning that it was an instigated narrative. Folks who were there, again, a lawfully sanctioned protest. There were manipulators in that group that I think tried to, in some ways, affect the color revolution that we saw happen in Ukraine. That, again, we were behind that. Victoria Nuland and all those folks. This is a travesty that I hope, to what you said, I hope justice prevails. Not that we take vengeance on those, but we allow justice to prevail and hold those accountable who did.
That's right. And in order for that to happen, Matt, it has to be really, really no more trimming around the edges. It has to be hacked off at the roots, and there has to be a complete catharsis of our system. And really, and I've made no secret about this, the only way I think that we're really going to be able to sever this poison at the root and excise this cancer is through the reelection of Donald Trump. He's the only one on the scene that I've seen who has both the inclination and the willingness to truly do what's necessary to return our government to the people.
Chris, I agree from a presidential perspective, and I'd also advocate that a 10th Amendment thing, right, and states' rights, is that the states need strong governors. They need strong attorneys general that provide that blocking force when a federal government gets out of control, like in Texas. We're going to just cut the wire. We're going to come in there and we're going to cut the wire down to allow the invasion to continue. In Texas, you can't defend yourself, right? What's that, Article 1, Section 10, I believe, right, gives the states the power to do this when the federal government is abdicating their role. But you need strong governors and you need strong attorneys general, because, remember, our founding fathers never envisioned a national government. We have a nation, but we had a federal government and a state government and local government. It's never supposed to be a national government. And I harken back to the words of Lord Acton, right? Now, most folks remember him. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. He actually wrote, I don't think he ever wrote books, but he wrote pamphlets. And one he wrote after the Civil War. I know some probably folks in Louisiana would call it the war between the states, because it wasn't fighting for the same seat of government. But he said he feared, with the loss of the South, he feared for the great American experiment of federalism, because now power and money will concentrate.
That's right. That's the reason why we've said that this confrontation on the border, it's so important that the states assert their constitutional sovereignty there, not only because it will help protect our country from this unlawful invasion, because I believe it'll set a very, very positive precedent going forward, and it will remind the states that they do have the constitutional authority to check federal overreach.
Yeah. And Matt, you've talked a little bit about 5G warfare, and you've mentioned color revolution in relation to the border. Would you talk a little bit more about that for our listeners, and would you maybe give some reminders of what an orange revolution or a color revolution is?
Okay, well, the border itself, and I think one of the most telling perspectives on that, I forget the gentleman's name, but he was on Tucker Carlson, one of his most previous interviews, and he's a journalist down there. And we have Michael Yon on our call. Typically, a couple Fridays we've had Ben Bergquam on down at the Darien Gap, and he talked about this economic migration, perhaps is a cover for an invasion. Right? You have military-age males coming in, primarily China, right? That want to be on camera, don't want to be seen. We had Jason Jones there in Texas, formerly part of the Department of Public Safety, who does a lot of hits for Newsmax from the border. They had intercepted somebody there, the authorities, that was a Tier 1 Special Forces operator from Venezuela, who he said, Maduro's sending us up here to be disruptors in your country, right? So we know, they know, the government knows this is going on, right? As Michael Yon said, this is an American-funded suicide of America by America. And he says the same thing about the Germans, right? The Germans are doing the same thing to them in their country. And I think to understand what's going on is the American population writ large is waking up, right? As we talked about earlier, the black population, the Hispanic population. Hell, the Republican Party, probably I'd say more arguably now than the Democrat Party, is a party of the common man and woman worker, right, than the Democrat Party. So when you know you can't control the system, going back to Hilbert and Ackerman and Principia Mathematica and Kurt Gödel showing the limitations of a system. And by the way, why the singularity is so important, not to often tangent, but this merging of man and machine. It's not so much to, in my opinion, and others who study this, to liberate us and make us super creative, super powerful. It's to limit the human by
It's to stop free will,
machine, right? Because it is the human intellect, the human mind, the human imagination, which can outmaneuver things. I mean, I just literally watched Dead Reckoning, the first part of the Mission Impossible movie, right? It's in two parts. And AI, right? The entity was controlling everything, but it tried to calculate all the possible permutations, but it couldn't get everything because humans are not rational, right? I used to joke when I was studying economics at the University of Florida. Dr. Dave Denslow was my professor, and he said the first premise for economics, for any formula to work, was that humans are a rational agent. I said, really? Really, sir? Is it rational to go into debt when you have no money to buy a Christmas gift? No, humans are not rational.
That's not.
So you're starting from a faulty premise.
Yeah.
So to understand, you have to understand it's a battle for the narrative. In the color revolution, it is what they try to do, and they try to do on J6, and they try to do in our movements today, is inject people who look like they're your supporters. Could be in the press, could be in groups you're part of, and they begin to want to rile up hate and discontent, right, from within. Ray Epps, a lot of folks will say he's one of them.
That was just the thought that I just had, Matt. That you're describing the interlopers at the J6 rally,
and talking to Patrick Byrne, and I would say, by the way, for all the forums we've had over 40 election integrity forums since 1 December 2021. Byrne, through TAP, the America Project, has funded over $500,000 so we could do that, out of his own money, right? So, and folks will say this about him and that about him and this about it. I just look at patterns, right? And at least regarding us, he has never done anything but support us. He's never tried to control a narrative, never tried to have speakers speak. It's however we want to do it. But to your point is that, he still has some connections with folks in government. And they said, one of the thing that's really caused that uniparty, I call it the globalist cabal, to go tilt was we did not get violent. We refrained. We're using this powerful muscle, not, and I'm pointing to my arms, my head, not the biceps, not the muscles here. And because we did not get violent, it stultified them. That was in their calculation, right? They were going to manipulate us. And I would say, to be honest, some of the folks who think they created MAGA, and I'm not going to go into great detail because I think you'll see a very well-known journalist come out with some pieces on this in the not too distant future. But those who think they created MAGA as their own tool, think that they can dispense of MAGA when it's no longer because they're better than MAGA, they have no clue that MAGA was organic. And I think it transcends the Tea Party. It is people waking up, realizing we are sovereign. The states have dual sovereignty with the federal government. The enumerated powers mean something. The 10th Amendment means something. And folks are waking up to this. And the fact that we did not get violent, but we studying, and those of us in the military who we studied fifth generation warfare, those of us in the military who did this for our country, on behalf of our country, against other countries, we first saw this, like, wow, the guns are now pointed at the American population by our own system. And I harken back to Secretary of State Matt Warner out of West Virginia, who was running for governor there. General Flynn's endorsed him. Another great gentleman running for governor is Phil Lyman, running for governor of Utah. Strong governors who will protect and defend their people. And what really got Mac Warner, the current SOS of West Virginia, apoplectic, and he's 21 years in the U.S. Army. He spent 5 years in Afghanistan as the Department of State trying to help over there, is that when our own intelligence community, that faux letter and 51 people, they knew it was false. Radcliffe came out and said this letter was not Russian. This was the laptop was authentic and so forth. When our own government targeted our own people, we knew we had crossed the Rubicon.
Yeah, it is truly
again,
frightening.
Our oath,
really, really frightening.
To the Constitution, not to a government, it's to the Constitution.
When your government turns on the people and is willing to dispense with the most basic doctrine of justice and due process and the presumption of innocence and the protection of our free speech, when your government is willing to do that and to do it with the vigor and the energy that it's doing it with now, the only thing at that point that can save a country and save a republic are patriots who step up. That's it.
And one of those patriots is Tina Peters. I think I had her on your show here recently. Amazing. She stepped up when she didn't have to, and there's inexorable links between the Mesa 123 report and what Haldeman showed in Georgia. And I know folks tried to get that into Judge Totenberg's court. I don't know if that was successfully effected before the presenting of evidence all concluded. But we're seeing those things occurring where this was intentional, this manipulation. And again, I point to folks, wait until about the 15th of this month. I think you're going to see things filed that's going to show we know what they did and how they did it and why they did it. And folks that I trust who are on the periphery of what's been a year long around the globe collecting of information and talking to people and intelligence and so forth have agreed that this is the real deal, and that we should see this, I think, hit the streets here on the 15th of this month.
Well, we're going to be on the lookout.
I'm so excited about that.
Me too, and we're going to absolutely be on the lookout for it. And I want to remind our listeners, Danielle, to be sure and join us for part 3 of our interview with Matt Meck. Very, very exciting to have him on. We're looking forward to that.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC, at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.